Okay, welcome to the first lesson of the physical science unit. In this lesson, we're going to be introducing the three main skills that we're going to focus on in this physical science class. So this unit will be a little bit disconnected from the other things we're going to cover, at least initially. But I do think it's a really good job of showing the three different skills that I'm going to want to emphasize in this class. So let me tell you what those are. Okay, first thing, observations. Looking at the world, figuring it out. Explanations, using those observations to explain certain phenomenon, to describe how the observations connect to what we see and be able to describe kind of what's going on in the physical world that's resulting in those observations. And finally, inferences. That's coming to new conclusions. So that will be largely looking at somewhat similar situations to what we've already seen, and then deriving a new conclusion from that. So thinking about what those observations imply and coming up with new ideas. And the first unit, I think, does all of these particularly well. So that's why I actually chose to start here. And what we are actually going to be looking at is the phases of the moon. So let me... that's going to be our first investigation. Now, step one, you're going to make your own observations of the moon and its different phases. And you'll see there are observation slides, which will give you very high-resolution images of the moon with its different phases. And then there will also be a place for you to write down your own observations. So you're going to kind of do that first on your own. Now, I'll tell you a couple of things to keep in mind. One, try to be as detailed as you can here. And then think about maybe 4 different things if you're having trouble coming up with different observations. So think about the part of the moon that's lit up in each picture. Look at the craters, any craters that you notice on the moon. Those can be very interesting features in how they change during the phases of the moon. What we see changes. Look for any shadows. That relates to the craters. That's largely where you'll see the shadows, but look for any shadows that you see. And lastly, look for any color variation. So any changes in colors, any differences in colors across the moon. Look for those. So keep those in mind as you're going through those observations. Next step, you'll answer the part 1 questions. Now, you won't have much to go on here. So these part 1 questions, you don't have to get these exactly right. They're more to start you thinking. Okay, so to start you thinking about, okay, what did all these observations I just made mean? And also, they're to sort of prompt you in the right direction for where we're going to be going with the explanation. Okay, so after you've done your best with answering the part 1 questions, you can look over those with your parent or your teacher. Then you'll go ahead and watch the explanation video. Now, like I said, answer the part 1 questions before you do this. The explanation video is where I'm going to present how all the observations connect together and ultimately how we can explain why the moon has phases from those observations, plus a few others that are a little difficult to show in film. So we'll be going over all of that. Step 4, you'll answer the part 2 questions. Now, these are most of the questions of the section. So some of this will be making sure you understood all the terms that were introduced, going back through that if you didn't. And then, can you put these explanations into your own words? So that's what the part 2 questions will be. Step 5. We're going to look at a similar phenomenon, not the same, but similar, looking at the planet Venus at different times. Now, these images will have a telescope, and they will be made through a telescope. They won't have a telescope. So they'll be looking at different magnifications of Venus. Now, all the images in the sequence will have the same magnification, so keep that in mind, that Venus will have the same magnification in each image, but in order to see Venus in this detail, you do kind of need to magnify it. These types of observations of Venus weren't possible until we had telescopes. And then step 6, you'll go ahead and try to answer the part 3 questions. Now, think of these as challenge questions. You're going to try to understand from the explanation of the phases of the moon that you will already know by that point, and what you observe about Venus, what can you conclude, or what new inferences can you make about the way Venus moves relative to the solar system? Now, you probably already know how Venus moves. You've been told this before. But think about what can you prove from the observation. So how do these observations connect to these explanations you've heard about the way Venus moves in the solar system? Finally, step 6, you will watch the inference video, which will be my explanation of that inference. So you can see how we get from these observations of Venus to a pretty advanced understanding of how the solar system works and how it was possible to do that just by observing one planet. Of course, that wasn't the only thing, but that is one thing you'd be looking at. And lastly, you can go back and re-update your answers to part 3 to make sure you've got the correct explanations down. Okay? So that will be the entire sequence of this introduction unit. And from there, we'll move on to other units after that. So thank you for tuning in with me, and I'll see you in the explanations video. Thanks.